Arthur Michel Ransome was a British journalist and writer. Born in 1884 in Leeds as the son of Cyril Ransome, Professor of History at Yorkshire College and of Edith Bolton, he initially was educated at Old College at Windermere, but was later moved to Rugby School in Warwickshire. His father died of a bone infection shortly beforehand at age 46. In 1901, Ransome began studying science at Yorkshire College before getting a job with a London publisher a year later. After the end of his employment in publishing, he supported himself by writing magazine articles. In 1903, he met the author W. G. Collingwood, striking up a personal relationship with him and his family. In 1909, he married Ivy Constance Walker, and the pair moved to Hampshire, and in 1910, his wife gave birth to their sole child, Tabitha. A commissioned book on Oscar Wilde by Ransome resulted in a failed libel suit against Ransome by Lord Alfred Douglas in 1913, the suit driving Douglas bankrupt. Ransome, however, did not receive much compensation despite the book's success and popularity in the media due to the trial as the result of his publisher embezzling the proceeds and then skipping the country. In 1913, Ransome journeyed to Russia to study local folklore. While in Russia, he published The Elixir of Life, his only novel not written for children. During this time, he became close to a number of Bolshevik leaders, including Lenin and Trotsky, while at the same time passing on information to MI5. In 1917, he met Leon Trotsky's personal secretary, Evgenia Petrovna Shelepina, who would later become his second wife. In 1919, Ransome was used by the Estonian Foreign Ministry to deliver to Moscow authorities an offer of peace during the Estonian War of Independence fought against the Russians. After delivering the message and securing peace, Ransome and Evgenia would live together in the Estonian capital of Tallinn. Ransome then remained in the Baltic states for some time until eventually divorcing his first wife, marrying Evgenia and taking her with him to London. In the 1920s, Ransome moved to the Lake District, where he continued spending his time between sailing and writing children's books, especially his popular Swallows and Amazons series. Ransome died in 1968 at Greater Manchester Hospital. The Elixir of Life is a work that seems much at odds with Ransome's usual output, so much so it was largely ignored by students and scholars focusing on Ransome's work. It was written while Ransome was in Russia in 1915 and was greatly admired by Walter de la Mare, who especially pointed out the grisliness of the way in which frequently and suddenly Ransome's characters exit the mortal plane, noting that Ransome had an art to make dust of them. The story begins in 1716 with the narrator, a certain Richard Stanborough, travelling in a carriage with his uncle. Richard had grown to quite a fop during his time with his uncle, later on describing his younger self as an incomparable young ass. Much to the chagrin of that old Yorkshire gentleman, whose sole occupation on earth that he found having any meaning at all being fishing. Richard Uncle especially takes umbrage not only with his nephew's excessive expenses, all to his personal credit no less, his foppish attire, and especially his blathering on about philosophy. So one day, while on the road, Uncle Anthony proceeds to throw Richard out of the carriage in the middle of nowhere to see how far his foppishness would get him. Very nearly penniless, Richard makes his way to an inn where he chances upon a very strange man named John Killigrew, who proceeds to inspire in Richard a fascination with the old alchemists and Kabbalistic philosophers, offering him a place at Killigrew Hall where he could be instructed into their true hidden meanings while assisting Killigrew as much as he might. Jumping at the offer, Richard soon accompanies Killigrew to his estate, despite the enigmatic warning given to Richard by a strange peddler who meets him in front of the estate's gates. Here Richard meets both Michael, the aged servant of Killigrew's, as well as Rose, supposedly a relation of Killigrew's. As the events unfold, the true nature of Rose's relationship to Michael is revealed, and Richard discovers the secret of Killigrew's immense wisdom. The sheer passage of time, far in excess of that allotted to mortal men. All thanks to the titular elixir discovered in a past age by Killigrew's old mentor Philodoxius, the continual renewal of which has forced Killigrew down a path of sin and crime, despite his initial noble intentions of simply wishing to obtain greater wisdom given enough time. Sins that Richard gets to witness first-hand and nearly too close for comfort as well. The novel had remained in near complete obscurity for almost a century after its initial publication. Were it not for Lovecraft's mentioning of it in his supernatural horror literature, it is doubtful it would ever see the light of day again. especially given it was so rare that only about 6 libraries in the United States held a copy back in 2009. Luckily, it was resurrected and published in a paperback double format with R.A. Spencer's The Lady Who Came to Stay by Hippocampus Press in their Lovecraft Library series. For anyone interested in reading a fantasy romance of the most dependable breed, solid, well plotted and paced, this book will be a perfect fit.